This isn't awkward at all. All right, I guess we'll just get started. So hello to everyone who's joining us digitally today in this live Zoom Q&A. Before we begin, I think it's important that even as we gather here today virtually in real time, during these climactic times, we want to acknowledge Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people as the traditional custodians of this land on which we work, study, live and meet, and recognise their continuing connection to land, water, and community as we pay respect to elders past, present, and emerging. So when shit hits the fan and society's in collapse, one way to maintain order and peace is to reinforce understanding and empathy for the experiences of those at the front line, such as security guards, so that they know that their stories are being heard. So we will be doing this today through giving the security guards of coronavirus, our essential workers, a safe space to talk about their work and life experiences on the front line. So welcome to the Essential Front, a live Q&A where you're able to sit back, interact, and importantly have a listen to a few essential workers from different industries who have held society together during this pandemic. And as we're all currently first-timers living through this societal collapse, today's Q&A will encourage you, our live audience, to interact with our guest speakers. So please feel free to ask any questions throughout the discussion in the chat box, and hopefully towards the end, if we have time, we can ask our guests some of your questions. So yeah, moving on to you, Olivia.
So let's dive in, guys. Today we're joined with three live speakers, Serena Verriez, Kathy Tamaris, and Niall McDonald. Thank you so much for taking your time to be here, guys. If it's okay, before we start the discussion today, starting with Serena, then Kathy, then Niall, if you could quickly introduce yourselves and let our audience know where your current essential role is and the industry that you're in. So I'll start with you, Serena.
Okay, hi, my name's Serena. I'm something called an assistant in nursing. I'm currently a third-year nursing student and I do this while studying. I'm currently working in the COVID assessment clinic. So the clinic basically tests everyone who has a symptom or who has come into contact with a COVID positive person, and that's my role.
Wow, thank you. And Kathy?
Hi, I'm considered an essential service in that I work in a chiropractic clinic. I'm also a massage therapist, remedial massage therapist, and in the fitness industry as a fitness instructor. So all severely affected by this situation, obviously. All my work was ceased contact immediately, although the practice did stay open until it could, no longer be seen as an option, really. And we transitioned to telehealth services pretty unsuccessfully.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, we'll definitely explore that later. Niall?
Yeah, I work replenishment and service at Officeworks. So that's been deemed as essential work for office supplies and people who need to complete work from home. And yeah, it's been affected by COVID.
Cool. So I'm going to launch into the first question for you guys. How have the restrictions following COVID-19 resulted in a change in your workplace? What measures has come into play, or has there not been much change? I'm going to start that with you, Serena. What would you say has been the greatest change in your workplace?
Well, my job role has actually changed quite dramatically. I was working in normal wards when I got redeployed down here. So it's changed almost everything about what I do day to day because my job role didn't exist a year ago. But in saying that, everyone here has adapted so incredibly well, so quickly, seeing as it's a pandemic and we really didn't know what we were doing. So I'm really, really proud to be a part of this team.
Yeah, so you should be. Kathy, would you say that your role has changed similarly like that because you are also in the health industry?
Yeah. Oh, sorry, I don't know.
That's all good. I'm just going to direct that to Kathy.
Yeah.
That's okay. Look, given that we work in close proximity to those in our care, it did change drastically. We already follow infection control and hygiene protocols, but and I had one request for a massage, fully gloved and with a face shield on, which was quite a bizarre experience. I don't think I ever want to repeat. But yeah, look, we had to take every precaution necessary to ensure that everyone felt safe as such.
Yeah, of course, of course. And Niall, how did you have to change your workplace working in retail in quite a large store as well? How would you say that there was a drastic change, or you didn't feel it as much?
Yeah, I think there was a change in the fact that it's not a medical field where that kind of precaution is already kind of instilled in the people, and it's not such a high required field to get into as like just casual job. Yeah, so like the change from the amount of people we can have in an aisle, how much we can have contact with like customers with their returns, and just with even handling money at the registers, and how that's pretty much changed over the course of the isolation period.
Yeah, of course. Of course, it would change a lot. So we're actually going to jump to Letitia now, who has a video question for us.
We're now going to play a short recording from an anonymous essential worker who's going to quickly talk to us about her position and the fears that come with being a worker during this time.
I work for the Department of Agriculture, Water and the Environment as a biosecurity officer at the airport. Working at the airport on the front line, being exposed to holidaymakers, residents and citizens returning who could be possibly carrying the COVID-19 infection is a constant worry. This is especially concerning that I could be potentially bringing COVID home to my family. Wearing PPE such as gloves, face masks, goggles, gowns and changing my PPE was a high priority, ensuring that I'd followed the procedure on how to put it on and the steps to taking it off. This made sure that there wasn't any cross-contamination from being on my PPE equipment to transferring it to my uniform and then to a person. Sanitising hands a million times a shift is also a must. Coming home, I have to be mindful in the removal of my uniform, making sure my children didn't touch me as they were home from school in quarantine. My uniform being washed to avoid any contact with anyone to prevent the possible spread of the virus. So I wanted to know what precautions you had to take and whether you felt a sense of worry or for you being an essential worker and having to continue to work in the public with the uncertainty of who around you may have the virus.
So just to refresh, the workers asking what precautions you had to take and whether you felt a sense of fear or worry being an essential worker and having to continue to work in the public with the uncertainty of who around you may have the virus. Kathy, starting with you, how do you feel about this?
Yeah, I was in a position not to really feel that kind of fear, although we had to change everything in the practice. Obviously, there's sanitizer left, right, and centre. We had to ensure spacing between appointments of clients, and it changed the atmosphere of the clinic. People coming in to feel relaxed and be treated in an environment where they were not in a high sort of stress state. But I think it just added to that stress. So it changed the whole vibe of the clinic, really. It was not a relaxed place to be.
Letitia, I think you cut out there for a second.
What about you, Niall? How did you feel about that?
All right. Yeah, I thought it was interesting because when the crisis kind of started up, there wasn't any quickly implemented rules from big companies, obviously. So it's harder to get, like those hand sanitizers that you have at the door, like you would have now at those big stores. So I kind of took it upon myself, and each kind of staff member took it upon themselves at their own level of precaution on how seriously they took it straight away. And that kind of added a bit of extra stress in regarding, like, say, if you felt like you didn't want to help a customer to, like you normally would before the crisis, they might take that in a bad way, but it's mainly just from a health perspective. And the same with wanting to cut down on shifts, just in case like you're more prone to be autoimmune diseases or something like that, working out with your managers and stuff on when you could actually work and maintaining your contract.
And you, Serena, you're working with that more closely. So how do you feel about this?
Look, although we do have all the equipment and resources that we do need, when the pandemic first started, everyone was a little bit lost on what we actually needed to do and the policies and procedures we needed to follow. So there were some issues around isolating patients when doctors or nurses required them to be tested, but we had already been in contact with them for hours and hours, and then they had decided that they needed a swab. So that was a little bit concerning, because if those people did come back positive, we had been in contact with them. And also with pandemic comes fear. So I've dealt with a lot of scared patients. I've been yelled at, spat on, like everything in the book. We've had thrown at us. We just need to make sure that we just always try to de-escalate and use our correct PPE and our hand sanitizer and infection control. That's the best we can do. Yeah.
Thank you for that insight.
I'll direct this to Helena now, who has a question.
I'm going to jump to the audience questions. Aaron's off a really good one. So I'm going to ask, are there any changes that have come from COVID that you would like to see continue after the virus? And I'm going to direct this to Serena first.
Look, I think it's really important that people maintain, especially hand hygiene. We're taught that's the most important thing. But what I do want, I would like that to stay the same, but I want people to keep in mind that not everyone's your enemy and not everyone's a potential to get you sick, and you just still need to be treating people how you want to be treated. But definitely the hand hygiene, I love it. Sometimes people wear PPE and it's not appropriate, but again, yeah, just the infection control hygiene I really like, which I would like to see kept continue.
Yeah, definitely. I agree. I'll just ask you, Niall, the same question. So are there any changes that have come from COVID that you would like to see continue after the virus?
Just in my store alone, across the branches, I think we've also implemented the click and collect drive-in, which is more like a contactless way to pick up items you've ordered online. Where like a customer might park in the bay and we bring out their order to them. And further, just like an overall, precaution from staff and customers, not as an extreme level after COVID as now, but also just a way of minimizing just the common flu or just other contacts that you might not realize you have with people. Obviously not limit it completely like we have, but yeah.
Awesome. That's awesome. So I'll just ask one more question. What has been the most interesting public response to the outbreak you've experienced? And I'll just ask this to Kathy just quickly to wrap up.
That's an interesting response. Yeah, it's interesting you say that because, like I said, we're in a clinic where people were almost annoyed that we had to kind of step up the practice of, spacing and hygiene. And I agree with Serena in that it's good to keep this hand hygiene going, but it's almost like some people were quite annoyed that they couldn't book in. And yeah, it completely changed the way we look at each appointment. So I'm not sure if that's a good thing, but a general awareness is good. People not coming in if they are experiencing symptoms. I mean, I want to keep that up. But I guess that was the most surprising thing, that people were just getting upset that they couldn't do what they normally do. It was frustrating for them.
Yeah, I totally get that as well. Well, that was awesome. Thank you guys so much for your answers. Just want to say a big thank you to you all for giving us your time here. We really appreciate it today. And yeah, these jobs have remained essential during this societal collapse because society has come to depend on these professions. So whether it's supermarkets, office supplies, or health reasons, whether it be physical or mental health, we're so grateful that you're all so dedicated and working through such a chaotic time. So thank you for being there when shit hit the fan.
Thank you.
No worries.
Thank you.
That wraps it up. Thanks, guys.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.